We're joined here today by a guest from Israel, Noam Ilan. Noam, welcome to Ireland, and shalom for as well.
Shalom, thank you.
Noam, we hear a lot of good things about alternative energy, renewable energy coming out of Israel, particularly in, say, the area of electric cars. Why do you think Israel is such a leader in this field?
I would say that Israel is a leader in the field because of a combination of culture of innovation, strong political and government support, the fact that Israel has no natural resources, and that most of the, let's say, the oil in the world is not in the hands of the friends of Israel. So the combination of those visits probably made us a global leader in the field of renewable energy for the last few decades, I would say.
Sure. I mean, in this part of the world, and to a lesser degree in the United States, these technologies and these ideas tended to be seen as hippie ideas. Have they become more respectable through the association with science?
So I think the world of renewable energy started in really, I would say it did start in a way from most of it started from really, I could say, hippie culture of doing things in an alternative way, of saving the environment, and not subjecting to the control of the establishment which controls oil and fossil fuels. So I think it probably had originated there, but and that's good. I think that's a good contribution by the hippie culture. But today it's definitely became a very serious technological and business arena, and today it's totally considered in the front of science and technology and business, and even when I started it 10 years ago, it was much more considered to be alternative, and now it's totally, I wouldn't say mainstream, but it's going there.
And when we talk about alternative technologies, and we can come round to looking at some of the ones, and particularly the ones you're working on yourself, Noam, are they tending to be specific to certain locations or certain terrains or certain climates? For instance, I cannot imagine the technologies that you might be using in the southern Sinai, where you're based, being similar to the ones we might look at using here, for instance.
Okay, so some of the technologies are not applicable, for example, in Ireland. For example, when I talk about the solar technologies that are based on concentrating the sun by mirrors and creating solar energy, that's less applicable because those technologies require high direct sun radiation, which exists in desert climate around the world, in arid areas. So that's less applicable. But for example, when I talk about other forms of solar PV, that can for sure work. It works in Germany, and it can work in Ireland, and it works in Israel. So very narrow fields of renewable energy are suitable for very specific locations, such as hydro. Big hydro is Israel. We do not have big rivers, so big hydro is not applicable. And geothermal, for example, is also suits places with high geothermal activity, which we do not have in Israel, and I have no clue if you have them in Ireland. But I would say that many of the technologies, such as wind and of course energy efficiency and smart grid and biofuels and electric vehicles, they are suitable globally.
Do we perhaps have to look at them first of all as to where these could be applied on a mass scale, and where they might be better applied on, say, an individual on a domestic scale, for instance? Solar power works quite well in an Irish climate, but usually in a single house or a group of houses where it's probably not ideal the way you could perhaps use it to set up small power stations the way you could in Israel and the way they do in southern Spain. Is that perhaps the way we need to start looking at it, and the micro and the macro?
So I would say that one of the great advantages of solar power and renewable energy in general is the fact that it's distributed. So I would say that the optimal way really to use it is on a distributed level, because then you save the transmission lines and even on the psychological level, a person that has a solar panel on his roof is more aware of the fact that he's using energy. So it's like, so I really support domestic use of solar or other renewable energy on a distributed level, and so and that's, I think that's suitable all over the world, including in Israel. Almost every house in Israel has domestic water heating from the sun, solar, but also we're starting to install those solar panels on individual houses, and that's great. Of course, in order to really establish a serious production of renewable energy, you have also to take into account the big power plants, renewable energy power plants. And Israel is, because especially southern Israel, we have a lot of land and a lot of sun, and it's natural to establish solar power plants on the ground, and it's very relevant. But saying that, even I would say that not in between, we have also, for example, commercial rooftops, very big commercial rooftops, which is great, because that's double usage of land. You don't have to use virgin land, but you're not also confined to very small scale. So I would say that in a way that's optimal. But basically, I think that domestic, commercial, ground-based, bigger power plants, that's all part of the solution. As I said, there's no one solution, not on the scale and not on the type of technology, because the energy problem is a huge problem, and in order to solve it, we need to use a large array of different solutions.
Yeah. In Israel, I could imagine one could have a degree of relative self-sufficiency through solar power. We always looked at it in this part of the world because of the lack of sunshine, that it was going to supplement rather than replace. In an environment like this, can solar then be cost-effective?
In the Irish environment?
Yes, whereas it's never going to be the full energy requirements that you could perhaps run a house on solar power in Israel, where you would have good
Actually, I have to mention that also in Israel, the problem is that solar is only generating during the day. So usually, what we do is net metering. We install solar on the roof, but we sell we buy the electricity from the grid during the night, and if we have excess generation during the day, we sell it to the grid. So usually you cannot really produce your entire energy usage unless you use storage, which storage is a big problem. Saying that, Ireland, I think any renewable energy that is being produced, as long as you're connected to the grid, it's good. You produce energy, and when you cannot produce energy, you buy it from the grid, from other resources, from large wind, or if no other option than from fossil. So not necessarily renewable energy is supposed to supply you the full amount of electricity you need, but it can certainly be a supplement as well.
Sure. Can I ask you then about the project you're involved with yourself? You're involved in what I understand is the Eilat Eilot Renewable Energy project. What does that involve? You're a co-founder and a project director down there. Noam, tell us what's that about?
Around 2006, the mayors of the southern part of Israel, the city of Eilat and the region of Eilat, decided that they want to they want to find a new way to enhance regional development, to create jobs, because the region is based
it's very much tourism, isn't it?
Tourism and agriculture.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's hard to bring highly skilled people or have the kids of the region stay only for tourism and agriculture. So they were looking for, and they decided, let's try renewable energy. We have a lot of sun, we have a lot of land, and let's bring someone over that knows this business and can start and try and do this project. So they offered me to come and start and manage this project. And actually we created a very interesting model for regional development based on renewable or sustainable energy. And the project has evolved since in a very good manner. We deal with the educational programs and academic work, and we do a lot on trying to promote innovation and invest in startup companies that operate in the region. And of course we promote the establishments of power plant and energy efficiency. And this year we're going to have the 5th Renewable Energy Eilat Eilot Conference, which is one of the leading renewable energy conferences in the world. And certainly that's very helpful with branding the region. We brand the region as a renewable energy hub. And this project was very successful, gained a lot of recognition in Israel, in the world, government funds. I think the population of the region is now has in a way better self-esteem, and we created quite a lot of jobs in this project. So that's a very interesting model for regional development using sustainable energy.
So, is it primarily a research project, or is it also what I would call a production project? When you say you created jobs, is that taking people from bringing them into the region, or is it taking people from transfer from agriculture into perhaps more of the high-tech areas like you're involved in?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that we do not necessarily focus on one aspect. The project is based on synergy between different activities. So it's research and it's implementation, it's innovation, and I would say that on one side that the more highly skilled people, engineers are being relocated from the center to the region. And in parallel, we're also now educating people and training them and opening academic programs to train local people to be the future workforce.
Now, one of the areas where renewable technology tends to be very beneficial is what we would call off-grid, usually in rural areas. I suspect there'd be quite a lot of that down where you are. Or is the Eilat region largely on the Israel grid, or does it have to tend to fend for itself to a certain degree?
Okay, so the Eilat region is remote, and it has characters of a remote grid, a small remote grid, but we are not off-grid. We are totally connected to the national grid.
That would be in Eilat, would it, or the entire region?
The entire region. It's Israel is a very advanced country. It's not like there's no. Unless you're like some
like
places
Australia.
you're a serious hippie and you do not want to be on grid because you live, out of your own choice. You live in some kind of a remote place. Then usually everything is on grid. Saying that since we are a remote grid, then we have to deal with the for example, the fact that we are planning to reach energy independence in few years, to produce more renewable energy than the energy we consume.
Okay.
So it's challenging on one hand to integrate it into a small grid, and on the other hand we'll have to transmit some of the energy to the center. So it's not off grid, but the entire region is a remote grid, and that gives us a lot of place to test new storage technologies, grid technologies, in order to enable the mass production of renewable energy in a remote area.
Sure. And what impact is that having on indigenous industry, Noam? Because often in remoter regions, energy is the bottleneck. So has that diversified the commerce of the area away from what you were saying was agriculture and tourism?
So the energy, I would say, the energy revolution in the area did not bring a new industry of, let's say, traditional industry, but because Israel is really a high-tech society,
Sure,
information, we do not have really traditional industry, but what it does do, or what we plan to do, is to start, in addition of innovation and power generation, we are trying to bring a manufacturing industry of renewable energy components. We hope that some of the startup companies will be also producing, will be successful and will start manufacturing renewable energy components and products and technology within the region.
Yeah. And how transferable is the technology, for instance? Is much of the work you're doing transferable to a country like Ireland?
I would say that a few things are transferable. One thing is the models that we are implementing. For example, Capital Nature is a firm that we started with. It's a joint venture with the government of Israel. That is a framework for enhancing and accelerating renewable energy innovation through investing in applied academic research, investing in renewable energy startup companies, operating a test and validation center. And that's an interesting model that Ireland can probably learn from on how to accelerate innovation. The other thing that Ireland can learn is the model, the regional development model. And specifically talking about technologies, everything we do in respect of smart grid, electric vehicle, energy efficiency, wind technologies, some of our solar technologies also can be certainly implemented in Ireland. So I think there's a lot of mutual interest and also some similarities between the Irish culture and Israeli entrepreneurship culture. So I think there's a lot of work to be done together.
Sure. And is it easier to develop it in a more compact, relatively, Israel is quite a compact landmass. I mean, you're admittedly in the bit that's away from the main population centres. Ireland is again quite a compact landmass. Do the solutions lend themselves, shall we say, to that sort of geographic environment?
Yeah, the fact that Israel is compact and small is suitable, especially for experimenting new technologies, because it's like a big beta site. It's easier to implement, easier to test technologies. So Israel as a whole is a test bed. For example, for a Better Place, which is an electric vehicle project that is being developed outside of in Israel. So the first place where they're implementing this new model of replacing batteries in stations, it's a totally innovative model, is Israel, because Israel is small and compact. Sure. And there are not great distances, so Israel is a very suitable place for testing and first commercial implementation of different technologies.
Yeah. And how do you, in terms of investment, is it, I would imagine once the technologies are up and running and operational and acceptable, that they're quite cost effective, but does it require large investment? In other words, can this be implemented on a small scale, or does it mean you have to do alliances with corporations or with governments?
Yeah. So I would say that in order to commercialize the technology and bring it to the market, it's not simple, it's not software. Mm-hmm. You need to build a serious pilot project that, because eventually this technology has to stand out in the open, in a harsh environment for 20 years, so it's not enough to do it theoretically in the lab. You have to build a pilot project which in a size that matters, in a size that is close to the final implementation. So usually and it's not an easy market, it's quite a conservative market, so it's usually advisable to collaborate with international corporation, and we do that. We work with Siemens and GE. Usually it's not easy to do something which is substantial without collaborating with governments, with big corporations. Unless you develop more, I would say, low-key grassroots technologies like a solar oven or something like that, which can be implemented on more low-key. Depends.
Sure. A couple of other areas that come into renewable energy, and I wonder what is the approach, or what's the state of development in Israel? And that we're looking at, say, biofuel and biomass. Are you looking at that at all in the Eilat project?
Definitely. Israel has now decided to invest a lot of resources in eliminating dependence on oil, global dependence on oil. Doing so by investing a lot of funds in accelerating innovation in the field. It's a government program, and we are part of this program. We develop technologies in the field of algae for biofuel. We grow castor for biodiesel. We are involved in different ventures to extract ethanol from cellulose. So we are collaborating with Better Place on implementing the EV the EV pilot. So definitely Eilat Eilot, and we're going to also exhibit and present that at the conference. Is involved not only with the electricity generation but also with solving maybe the biggest problem is dependence on oil for transportation.
Sure. The other area that we know that Israel is very advanced compared to other parts of the world is electric cars. What can you tell us about that now, and where does that fit into what we would call the renewable technologies or the renewable energy technologies?
Yeah, so electric vehicle is, as you know, it's a good solution. The main problem with that solution is that the batteries are expensive and they do not last for very long.
Yeah,
so that's the biggest problem. So there are a few solutions. One solution is hybrid, like Toyota Prius. One other solution is plug-in hybrid, but those are combinations. There's a guy I know who just issued a book called Creating Energy Security by Fuel Choice. What he says that every vehicle in the world needs at least two ways to fuel. Either one is EV and one EV together with the combustion engine or methanol. So what we're doing is we believe that each car needs to have two ways to fuel. So either it's for example, we're now working on using natural gas as a transportation fuel through methanol or in other ways, and we were working a lot on improving. Israel is working a lot on improving batteries, and of course there's the EV model of Better Place, which is pure electric, which is probably eventually it is the ultimate solution, but it's problem is it limits you and it changes the habits, because you have to change your battery pack more often, and so it's not easy to be on pure electric, but maybe that's the ultimate goal when either the Better Place model will be implemented, or the batteries will be improved eventually, and that's of course there's a lot of benefit in pure electric.
Yeah. And you've been in Ireland for a couple of days now. You've been seeing industry, you've been seeing government officials. What sort of reception have you got? Have been people welcoming the ideas? Because clearly there's application for Ireland in the future. There's benefit from Ireland in the future.
Yeah, I think people are very interested in the Israeli model of accelerating innovation in the field of renewable energy. They're interested in some of our technologies. Some people are interested in also opportunities to be involved in projects in Israel of generating renewable energy, and I was received well, and I think that there are a lot of similarities in the business culture and in creating new ventures, and a lot of similarities and a lot of room for collaboration, and I think hopefully also there will be an Irish delegation coming to the conference to see for themselves to visit the sites, to meet the people, to get exposed to what's hopefully we'll have some joint ventures with the Irish entities in the future.
Last but by no means least, we are in Ireland. They love to look for similarities. Now, one of the similarities that we've suddenly discovered is Israel has got there's a major gas discovery just off Israel.
Yeah.
We've also discovered there's a major gas field off the coast of Ireland. Does that make it more difficult to convince people about the benefits of research and development in renewable energy?
So I would say that there's no direct impact, which is very visible. But I'm sure that some people and policymakers in the back of their head say, okay, now we have a lot of natural gas, which is cheap and clean.
Energy.
So maybe we shouldn't invest so much funds in renewable energy. And I think that's short-sighted because I appreciate natural gas, but I see it as an intermediate, as a bridge technology. And I think that the funds, the revenues from natural gas should also be directed into investments in innovation and in advancing renewable energy, because eventually also natural gas will decline and will end, and we'll have to move into an economy of renewable energy, and so I think that many people agree with me, and still we're going to push forward the whole business of renewable energy.
Yeah, well, we've seen people to go to war for energy. I've never seen anybody go to war over a patent. So perhaps maybe that's the solution there. But Noam Ilan, thank you for your time today, and welcome to Ireland for our weather as well.
Good Guinness.
Yeah, thank you.